So, excellent to be here again. I was actually here last year talking about testing in DevOps, so this is a totally different topic. I might warn you that I have quite a few slides, but you will get the slide decks afterwards, and there's also a list of references and links at the last slide that you get. But starting out with standard stuff about me. I'm male, I'm middle-aged, I am Caucasian or white, as you might call it, and I'm Swedish. These are all things that you can see or can look up. These are kind of the normal diversity objects that you find. So I'm going to tell you the story, and the story is about a company I used to work for that had some issues that we tried to solve. And moving from a really smooth organization where everything was dandy, good quality, good delivery times and everything, we started to find out that the teams were, well, increasingly slow. They had scattered solutions, not keeping to the architecture, kind of bad quality through all, and they were not working well together. So we tried to find out why did this happen. They were very good, and all of a sudden they weren't so good anymore. And we realized that even though we were kind of diverse, we also implemented a more outspoken diversity policy. So we thought that it might be connected. So you started to look at this, and it was said that gender, age, and nationality would be kind of a significant thing within the teams. And we thought that this kind of coincided when the teams kind of deteriorated, so it could be related. And cultural bias, we thought that was the kind of the culprit for this, the big bad wolf, so to say. And there's a report that comes out every second or third year that is called the World Value Survey that kind of pinpoints nations depending on how autonomous you are or how non-autonomous you are. And we use this as a starting point, and Sweden is up there. We're super autonomous, apparently. And then we plotted out all other countries that we could find that we were working with or we had people from, and we got this grid. And from this grid, we then started to look at, well, the different locations that we had, because we had different geographic locations and different nationalities, the offices in locations, the teams in the offices, and also individuals in the teams, and see if we could find a pattern that we start working with. And the result was really that we had teams that were super homogeneous, and we also had teams that were super mixed. But the same thing was that, well, there was apparently no pattern here. Some good or bad team were homogeneous or mixed, and vice versa. So this wasn't the really thing that we were looking for, apparently. So, there we go. So, in short, the common base with diversity, gender, well, we all know that's not male and female only, and it's nothing that's kind of typical male or typical female within the industry, I would say. Age, if you work a long time in industry, you might be more experienced, but age doesn't really make the person you are, and the same thing, nationality. You might need this, use this model that I showed for nations, but not for individuals from different nations. So, we need to look for something else. Building the teams, I guess that you work in companies that are like my company. We kind of are meritocracy, which means that we build our teams on merit and knowledge. That's kind of the main thing that we use. And doing that, we use a competence matrix that looks similar to this, meaning that we kind of identify the most important areas. It might be a knowledge or a tool that you know, or whatever. And then we have a medium low, and what is the need for the team, and what is the minimum for the team. We look for gaps, and then we try to fill the gaps with training or hiring new staff. It's kind of a simple thing. But what we also realized in our journey here, that was that we changed the management model at the same time. So decisions for hiring and moving people between the team was actually on the team level. So we had kind of a funnel with HR people taking new people into the organization, and it was decided by the team if they were hired or not. And they didn't get any really good training on how to hire staff. So it was then eventually the team lead who did the hiring, and they ended up with something we called the beer test. During the interview, they kind of realized, is this a person I want to go out and have a beer with? Yes or no? No, they were out. Yes, they went on in the pipe. And eventually we got clones of the team lead as teams. So they were very, very alike within the team. And personality traits, that is something that comes from behavior assessment, which is a psychology field to observe, describe, explain, and predict behavior among people. It's both heritage and environmental factors. And there's different models. I guess you heard about like the Myers-Briggs, the five-factor model, or DISC, as we used. So the DISC model, I don't know if you attended Rob's session the other day. He talked about the DISC model, and anyone attending should take it. So you might know what DISC type you are. But in short, dominance, the green one, that are people that are direct, results oriented, forceful. We have the red area, people that have influence, they're outgoing, they are optimistic, lively, and so on. We sometimes call these extroverts, which is not really correct. And then we have the blue ones. The blue ones are steady, they work long, they are even-tempered and patient. And then we have the yellow corner, conscientiousness. Those people are kind of reserved, analytical, and private. So often you kind of tell people that they are introverts, which is really not correct. So I'll come back to that. We plotted out the teams using the DISC analysis per person. The DISC analysis is barely that you answer some 60-ish question, and out of that you see what kind of person you are. And you are never kind of only blue or only yellow or only red. You're kind of a mix, but some of them are dominant. So we realized that we had teams that were kind of in each of these factors. And if you have a dominant team, that would be like you have a development team full of Donald Trumps. That doesn't really work. You have different architecture, you have different ideas, you have different minds, and no one wants to work well together. You have the influence team, they are probably really happy and have a good time. They're not very super productive. The blue team, they work along, but they don't take any big risk or chances, but they kind of do the things they are supposed to do. And then the yellow team, they analyze stuff, they think about it a lot, but not might get out of the trenches, so to say. So what we did, which is kind of quite obvious, is that we moved people between the teams based on the traits. This was not done overnight. This was a process that went on for at least 6 months. We synced this with the sprints, with the projects, with the people, what they wanted, and so on. And then we kind of mixed it. And we also, when hiring, we look at these different traits to get people that are a good mix within the team. And you might have this as a question. We have not an optimal mix. What we said that we want to have two people that are kind of from three different traits within one team. So we mix them up. There might be an optimal mix. I don't know. We haven't looked at that. So what we ended up with was something that looked like this. People that are really strong in one area are together with other people that are really strong within other areas, and then people that are not so strong in the areas are together with people that are not so strong in the other areas, just to compensate for the really, really strong ones. And that are a kind of new constellation. And now when we actually hire or allocate within the teams, we use, for the first thing, is the competence matrix, which is really good. We still need it. We still use it. But we also do the DISC analysis for every new member, and for all the team members, we actually know what DISC analysis person or traits they have, and then we mix the teams depending on that. So the result of this is basically good things. The teams have higher throughput, better quality, and kind of stick to the solutions that they're supposed to. All teams are working well together. And there's a higher level of communication within the team and between the teams, which is kind of really, really good. And this change happened really quick. After we moved around people and hired people and so on and got a mix within the team, the change was kind of instant. That is really, really good. So, I have still a couple of minutes. So we found some interesting stuff along the way that could be interesting if you're building cross-functional teams or if you have some issues within the teams working together. One is the Köhler-Ringelmann effect. There's always a significant guy who found it in the beginning. The Köhler effect is when people are working better within teams. They're working harder. And that could be down to two factors. It could either be that they are competitive. They realize that there are other people within this team that are actually working harder or better than me, so I need to step up. Or it might be that they actually care about the team. So I'm within a team, so I need to actually do a little better work because the team is depending on me. In the other end of the spectrum, we have the Ringelmann effect, which of course means that you don't work very well within the team. You actually work less good. And that's also called social loafing. So it comes down to that you feel, okay, so I'm in a team, it doesn't really matter, it will get work done anyway, and I can basically hide. So that's something we need to check out for. And the main remedy for this behavior, I would say, is to emphasize the greater good of the team. Everything is down to the team in the end. And also, if something goes wrong, don't look for the person who did something wrong, who actually implemented a bad code or who didn't test this thing. It's always up to the team to solve anything that goes wrong, and it's always the team that should celebrate when something goes good. And that kind of works well with these two effects. Extrovert and introverts. I just want to mention this because there's a kind of a misinterpretation by folks what it actually means. Extroverts are persons gaining energy from socializing. And on the other hand, we have introverts, which are people who are drained of energy. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you can have people that talk a lot in a group, and then they get tired and move away. They are probably then introverts. But it doesn't mean that it's a person that doesn't say anything. And it's, of course, a scale. You can be either or more or less. And then we have ambiverts, who actually moves along this scale back and forth. That doesn't really have a state. And it's a good thing to keep out for these people who get tired within group or pair activities. If you're drained on energy, you might do, well, not as a good job as you should, or you might get strained, or you might not feel too good. So it's a good thing to keep an eye out for people who get drained in social situations. And autism. We also had a look at autism. It's really interesting. Introvert versus autism. There's some people saying that if you're introvert, you probably are around somewhere on the autism scale. And you might be right, because science is really out on this one. Some scientists say, yes, you are, and some say, no, you aren't. So it's not a true false thing. And Asperger's syndrome. I know there's a lot of people say, well, testers, they are introverts, or they don't talk to other people, they work alone, they're probably somewhere around the autism scale. And Asperger is a diagnosis along the autism spectrum, and it means that you basically are pretty bad at social interaction. You don't communicate in a non-verbal fashion too well, and it's along with restricted and repetitive patterns of behavioral interest. So if you have any friends who are really, really avid plane spotters or train spotters or stuff like that, who knows everything about any takeoff that takes off from Glasgow or whatever, they are probably on the Asperger syndrome somewhere. They kind of tend to these details really, really hard. And they don't work that well within society. So autism testing, could we actually gain something from this? There's a Danish company, Specialisterne. They started some 15 years ago because the founder's son had Asperger, and he realized that this guy actually has some really, really good qualities that could be used within testing. So the things that makes you don't really work in society as a whole is make you a really, really awesome tester. So attention to detail, strong logical and analytical skills. They have an ability to actually repeat work over and over and over again and don't get bored. And they see anomalies directly. And also one thing is that you don't have the social boundaries that other people have, and they can ask the questions until they get the answer. Normally we try ourselves, but they ask until they get the answer they want. And since the bulk part of this company are people with some sort of diagnosis, they call specialist people. And all others, administrations and so on, they are called, they have normality syndrome, since they are kind of a minority. So, when it comes to testers, I was in a workshop Monday, and we were around the table, and then someone said, well, we're all testers around this table, so we cannot really learn anything from each other. We cannot have any knowledge or mindset thing going on between us. Since we're all testers, we're all the same. I would argue that we are not. I mean, this usually said that developing is a skill set and testing is a mindset. Yes, I can probably agree to that to some extent. But on the other hand, we are not all the same. And James Bach has identified 7 kinds of testers. So if you read this that's coming up, you might find that you belong to one or two of these groups rather than just being a tester. The administrative tester, the person that coordinates, get things done. We have the technical testers. Those are the people who like the tools, the code, stuff like that. I think Corina is a technical tester, definitely. And we have the analytical tester that loves models and optimal tests. If you have someone in the team or the tester that says, I wrote one test that covers everything we need from A to B. It's like 2,000 rows long, but it covers everything. That's probably an analytical tester, and please stop him doing that. Social tester is someone that brings people together on testing, loves pair testing, mob testing, sessions like that, sitting down with the developers, showing what they do. The empathic tester is someone who empathizes with the user. So you always have the user in mind. What would the user react? How would the user react to this one? What happens if this one fails, and so on. And it should not be confused with the user expert, which is kind of the subject matter expert. This is the person that knows the system, front, back, everything about the system. He knows what every little button or every little function does. And we shouldn't forget the developer. The developers can test. I mean, they should write the unit tests. They should make sure that the code they deliver is testable, and they should probably do this in conjunction with a tester who has some ideas, but they should belong to the tester group as well. So probably you kind of can fit yourself into one of the two of these groups based on this. There's a link to this as well in the end of the presentation they can use afterwards. So going back to me, I'm introvert. And even though I'm Swedish, I'm actually second-generation immigrant. This is my disk analysis. I'm very, very blue, but also a strong part in the red area. And I'm a administrative analytical tester. I love models to start with. That's kind of my thing. And if you're giving this information instead of the one that you got from the start, you probably know me better as a person and know how I work. So what makes me tick and how I will work in the group. And I will end with this one, the art of thinking independently together, diversity. You can't really see on people how they will react in a situation, who they are, how they function. It's their personality that kind of dictates that, and it doesn't really matter if you're from Sweden or India, if you're a boy or a girl or whatever, it's who you are as a person. So that's the real thing. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan. Do we have questions? Yeah. So the first one. How did you communicate this change to the people? Did you face any obstacles when people were shuffled around?
To start with, everyone was kind of aware that we have an issue. I worked for a company that had several development offices, and they kind of the leading part was sitting somewhere else, and they were kind of complaining, and people knew that we had an issue, but no one really knew what it was. So we put forward, we were very, very transparent with what we did with the disk analysis. Everyone participated in that, and they realized when we showed the result that we might need to shuffle things around. But it was we worked with the people, definitely the people in the team. We didn't do it overnight, as I said. It took like half a year to do the whole thing around. And we had like, if a team were 5 people, we moved 2 out and 2 new in. So I mean, there was not much moving around. There was kind of very few people. We had 6 teams in one location and 6 teams in another location. And it was kind of not much moving. But we were very, very diligent when it comes to new hires to actually fit in this mix.
Okay, the next question is actually a very nice follow-up, or it was, because it was, it's uploaded, yeah? And how did the teams react? How hard was it to people to get used to the new order?
It took some time, but it kind of, since the mix was good, we had to take a retake for 1 or 2 teams that we kind of removed again. But the reaction was kind of good, because they realized that we work better together. We are kind of friends within the team in a better way than just shuffling along. So I think the team reacted good to it. And as I said, we were very, very transparent, and we kind of had everyone on board for the whole journey. It was not decided by someone that we should do this.
Okay.
Yep.
The next one is, do you make the disk analysis before or after you hire the new colleague? If after, do you have any other methods to make a quick analysis during the interview?
It's like one of the last things we do, basically. So one of our HR managers actually got the certificate for doing the DISC analysis. We do that in-house, which means that we do all the sessions before, the knowledge, the normal things that you do with the interviews and so on. And if we see that this person is probably a person that's going to fit into our organization, I mean, you still have the gut feeling and so on. But one of the last steps is actually doing the DISC analysis. And then we see, we don't really say yes and no to people based on the DISC analysis. It's more like, okay, this is a very green person. Do we have somewhere that this person could fit? So we don't say we don't need any red person in this organization out. So it's more like the final fit for which team this person would fit into.
Okay. And the last question, very interesting one. How do you handle the psychology test results? Aren't these personal data?
Yes, you could argue that they are. But as I said, we were transparent. We had everyone on board. And we don't really say that John is that and Tom is that. Okay, if you're in a team that are predominantly only green people, you know that they are. But we don't say that they are 100% that, 20% that. Every person gets that result sent to them individually. And then we, of course, say this is a mix for the team. We don't point out any person who's either or. And everyone has agreed to this. This was also very important that we had an agreement up front for doing this.
Okay, this was the last question. If you have any more, I guess you can find Jan
on
the corridors.
Yes.
Thank you very much for a great talk.
Thank you.
Once again, guys, Jan Sällström.